I grew up in a little estate, Colville Estate, but it was close to all the surrounding areas. There was always something happening, so it was very easy to get caught up in a bit of, madness.
Yeah, madness. Let's call it madness.
Let's call it madness. Let's call it what it is. It's always easy to get caught up with madness because you could easily be out with one friend. You go across the road over here.
You're in the wrong postcode.
Now you're in the wrong postcode and you're in the wrong road.
Consequences.
And those consequences could usually lead to someone
All
trying
sorts.
to do some crazy stuff, or someone trying to encourage you to join them and do what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
And growing up in that area at that time, you didn't see any alternative. It was very easy to say, oh, okay, well, this is in front of me. It's an easy fix. I'm young. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to be involved. And, maybe there's opportunity to make some money and spend it on whatever, whether it's sweets, whether it's, trainers, whether it's, food, so in some cases it sounded like an easy kind of opportunity. But I guess for me, if I was to be honest, a lot of it was staying inside and trying to focus on, passing my exams and, getting ahead in my education, really. And that was kind of the one thing that my parents were always trying to instill in me, just kind of, make sure you get your work done. The usual kind of process, go to school, go to college, go to university. So in my head, there was almost like if I didn't go through those processes and reach those objectives, that I've almost failed a little bit. So that was part of it, because I could easily, go outside and interact with a few people on this side, and then, I'd always remind myself that I need to go home. I have an objective, I have something to achieve, and I just couldn't really see the end result of all of that work, of being out on the roads, as they would say, and kind of doing all
the madness.
Yeah, the madness. I couldn't really see the end result. I think for me, I'm someone that tends to kind of think a few steps ahead, and I think the one thing for me was also my seeing my older brother kind of interacting a lot of the time with these people, and not being, he wasn't I wouldn't say he was a part of it, but he was getting himself in certain scenarios,
certain situations.
Yeah, which I saw being the younger brother and thinking, I'm not going to go that way. I'm not going to go that way. Okay. So that was part of it. It was seeing older, the olders, they would say, or the older friends in the area, and seeing the results of what they were doing, and ultimately saying, this doesn't make sense.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against Our Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and our guest in the studio this week is none other than the amazing Mr. Michael G. Donkor.
Yes, thank you for having me. Michael G. Donkor. G stands for Jampo. It's a family name.
Right, okay.
From my mother's side.
Okay.
So I was named after her dad, my granddad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael is a certified financial planner.
Yep.
And he's also a wealth manager.
Yep.
And basically he helps people sort out their finances, in a variety of ways. And he's going to tell us a bit more about what he does and how he got into where he is and everything. But Michael, you're welcome to Against Our Odds.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favor. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
And loving the content that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have this conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
So you're originally, obviously from the name, you're originally from Ghana. You have Ghanaian heritage.
Yes.
But born here, presumably?
Yes. Ghana heritage. Both my parents are from Ghana.
Okay.
I'll probably butcher the name because I'm a London boy.
Yeah.
I was born here, and they came here in the 80s.
Okay.
I've got older brother and younger sister. They're originally from the Akrompong area, I should say.
Okay.
See, I butchered it. I get in trouble for that all the time. But yeah, they came in the 80s. Had my older brother. They actually migrated to Nigeria first, and then they moved over to London.
Okay.
And then I came 87. So
Okay.
yeah, I've been
There's
here
a
since.
story about that, which
Yeah.
I know, but yeah, I mean, are you happy to talk about it? The fact that they moved to Nigeria?
Yeah,
What made them move to Nigeria?
Yeah,
So just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked my dad a few times. He's given me the bite-sized kind of
Okay.
story of it, but he used to be in the military. So I think it was around the time that JJ, was it JJ Abraham?
Rollins.
JJ Rollins.
Yeah.
JJ Rollins. They had a coup in Ghana, and I think off the back of that, he migrated with my mum over to Nigeria and ended up staying there for close to a year. So he had my older brother, and while my mum was there, my dad came over to London,
England, okay.
and he was trying to find his way here and settle here. And once he became a bit more settled and established, and then he brought my mum over with my brother. So, that was the kind of the bite size of the story. There's a lot more kind of important details in terms of how they got over, because my mum is a twin, so her sister also helped to make sure that they got over safely.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a journey, and they've been here ever since.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like? We like to start these conversations with a bit of context about your background, because that kind of helps our viewers understand, your thinking, and if there were certain values and stuff like that you kind of live by. What was it like growing up in the Ghanaian home in England? With English friends, whatever it is. I don't know which part of London you settled, but what was it like? Because Ghanaian parents tend to be quite strict.
Yeah.
And you know how things are like
Yeah.
over here. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting. My parents, I wouldn't say they were very strict.
Okay.
I think they were quite liberal to some extent.
Chilled out.
Yeah, they were quite chilled out. When I think about how my dad has been with me and my mom has been with me, I think they have been quite relaxed. There was structure in the home. They've been married, for over 30 odd years or so. I grew up in East London, so I grew up in Hackney. In East
Hackney
London.
proper?
Yeah, so I'm a
Hackney boy.
I'm a Hackney boy. So originally from Hackney, just from Hoxton area.
Okay.
Not far, very close to Shoreditch. It's pretty much the same now.
Okay. It's posh now, isn't it?
It's a posh area. I feel a bit let
It's
down.
gentrified.
Yeah, I feel a bit let down. I haven't, I've seen I've seen the dark side. I've seen the nice side of it, and I haven't been able to capitalize on all of it. It's all right. It's all right. I had my time. I had my time. But I grew up in that area with my family. I went to school locally as well. And in terms of kind of the upbringing, they were pretty much learning from us. I would say, So I don't speak the language that well. They were speaking the natural, their
Ghanaian.
the Ghanaian dialect.
Yeah.
There was Twi, but they were speaking Tripong as well. They're together. So we didn't always have those direct conversations, and there wasn't always that active kind of learning from that side. There was more of a kind of you're here, you're in this space. You're gonna grow up as a British man, as someone from the UK, and there was almost a bit of us kind of showing them what it was like to be here as well. So that was the kind of dialect and the dynamic that we had there.
So, I mean, I know growing up in Hackney, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hackney's kind of right in the thick of it.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you kind of escape getting into gangs and you know that kind of vibe? You know,
Yeah.
young black guy, handsome black guy
Yeah.
in Hackney. I mean, how come you managed to figure things out?
Yeah, it wasn't easy because you had a lot of influence around you, and there was always, I grew up in a little estate, Colville Estate, but it was close to all the surrounding areas. So you had the Boulevard, you had like Hoxton Square, you had Holly Street, you had London Fields around the area, you had all these other bits, and there was always something happening. There was always some kind of interaction, and there was always some kind of, friendship or group of members, and people would always interlink with other people. So it was very easy to get caught up in a bit of, madness.
Yeah, madness. Let's call it madness.
Let's call it madness. Let's call it what it is. It's always easy to get caught up with madness because you could easily be out with one friend. You go across the road over here.
You're in the wrong postcode.
Now you're in the wrong postcode and you're in the wrong road.
Consequences.
And those consequences could usually lead to someone
All
trying
sorts.
trying to do some crazy stuff, or someone trying to encourage you to join them and do what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
And growing up in that area at that time, you didn't see any alternative. It was very easy to say, oh, okay, well, this is in front of me. It's an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
I'm young. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to be involved. And, maybe there's opportunity to make some money and spend it on whatever, whether it's sweets, whether it's, trainers, whether it's, food, so in some cases it sounded like an easy kind of opportunity. But I guess for me, if I was to be honest, a lot of it was staying inside,
Oh, okay.
was staying inside at times and trying to focus on, passing my exams and, getting ahead in my education, really. And that was kind of the one thing that my parents were always trying to instill in me, just kind of, make sure you get your work done. The usual kind of process, go to school, go to college, go to university. So in my head, there was almost like if I didn't go through those processes and reach those objectives, that I've almost failed a little bit.
Okay.
So that was part of it, because I could easily go outside and interact with a few people on this side, and then I'd always remind myself that I need to go home. I have an objective, I have something to achieve, and I just couldn't really see the end result of all of that work, of being out on the roads, as they would say, and kind of doing all the
madness.
The madness. I couldn't really see the end result. I think for me, I'm someone that tends to kind of think a few steps ahead, and I think the one thing for me was also my seeing my older brother kind of interacting a lot of the time with these people, and not being, he wasn't I wouldn't say he was a part of it, but he was getting himself in certain scenarios,
certain situations,
which I saw being the younger brother and thinking, I'm not going to go that way. I'm not going to go that way. So that was part of it. It was seeing older, the olders, they would say, or the older friends in the area, and seeing the results of what they were doing, and ultimately saying, this doesn't make sense. It's not for me.
So what do you study in university?
So university, I studied economics and accounting.
Okay.
So I went to Hertfordshire University.
Okay.
I was at a space where I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to go into, but accounting almost sounded like it was the route. You told me that you're...
I did. I'm a chartered accountant.
Yeah. So, I should have been following that path. But, when I left university, it didn't sound as appealing, and Trying to balance the sheets, it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
It was a tough one. But I went to Hatfield's business campus at Hertfordshire, and I was studying business economics and accounting.
Okay.
Did a 3-year honours degree, and off the back of the last year was kind of when I realised that I wanted to move into investing more so than accounting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did a qualification. I did a lesson called International Business.
Okay.
And off the back of that, I realised that I was a bit more interested in this area as opposed to just being an accountant.
Okay.
So I had quite an interesting journey, because I think for me, what happened was I went in with the idea that, look, I've gone through this journey. I'm good at maths. I want to be an accountant. And when I went through university, I think the key thing that I realized was I was more of a people person.
Okay. I get that.
So yeah. there was a little bit of a clash with me kind of feeling like, just, no offense to accountants, but
No, I get you.
Sitting behind and, kind of looking at the numbers, whereas I started to realize that I was more happy with kind of interacting with people, being out and about and doing all the runarounds, especially at that time. So I kind of fell out of the accounting interest and started moving into investing. Okay. And what essentially happened was I went to work for a bank. That was my first kind of transition from uni, and that was my first kind of experience of having that interaction with people and kind of using my strength of kind of being relatable, build a rapport, but talk to people about finance. So that was my first stint there. Prior to that, it was more just kind of retail stuff that I was doing at university. So with that, I learned more about finance, better understanding of certain products, pensions, bank accounts, credit cards, loans, all that kind of stuff. And after doing that for a year or two, I actually moved into stockbroking and studied for that qualification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it was quite a unexpected transition.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I guess what essentially happened was I was thinking about what my next step would be, and I met a financial advisor at HSBC at the time, and he was kind of showing me what he does as a role. I'd never really knew about the job until then, and from that conversation, I became almost like his lead generator, in the sense that I was in the branch, and if there was anyone that needed that assistance, I would send them over to him. So, if someone sat down with me and we're looking at their bank account, but I've identified that they need help with their pension, I would send them over to him. Okay. And, he would help them. And I think what essentially happened was there was a period where he had done some work for a client, and he'd messaged me and said, hey, look, I've done this for a client, well done. I've made X amount of money from this. Yeah. And in the bank at the time, you used to get points for opening accounts, for doing certain things. And he emailed me and said, oh, well, I've opened this account for this client, I've made all this money, and you've made X amount of points.
Oh, okay.
And I was sitting there thinking, huh?
Points on money.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I'm in this for the right. I'm on the right side of this trade.
Fence, yeah.
So I was kind of in the headspace of, I need to find out what he's doing.
What he's doing, okay.
And what I'm doing over here. And off the back of that, I started looking into financial advice. And I originally found out about the CFA, the Certificate for Financial Advisors at the time. So I'm showing my age a little bit. But I started to study that qualification. So I did that first, and I remember speaking to the bank and telling them, look, this is the path I want to take. Because at this time I was working in the branch, I was supervising, I was opening the branch on the weekend. So I was kind of playing quite a pivotal role. But I had now decided, I'm ready to kind of transition into financial advice, and their response was more or less of, hey, kind of start here first. Let's move over to mortgages, and we'll see how it goes. And I don't know, mate. It might be the right decision, might be the wrong, but for me, it just didn't really make sense. So I said, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to study this qualification, and I'll see how it goes and move. And I eventually left. I left and I took some time at home, and I started studying the CFA. And while I was going through that transition, I stumbled across what was the level 3 in securities exam under the CISI. And I just switched. I don't know why. I just switched, and I took some time to get those qualifications out of the way and get qualified, and then I moved into stockbroking.
Okay.
So it was a bit of a weird transition, because I wasn't expecting it, but I at that point had an interest in the stock market, and you had films like Boiler Room and all these old-fashioned films that were coming out, Glenn Ross and all these other crazy films, and that generated a bit of interest. Wall Street as well, obviously. So I did the qualifications, and then I started looking for a job as a financial advisor. As a stockbroker.
Stockbroker, okay. All right, Michael, this is quite a pivotal point in our conversation. Can you tell our viewers why they need financial advisors? Because some people think, financial, But I'll tell you what, it's one of the smartest moves that anybody can make is to have a financial advisor. There's so many things that we assume, and we kind of leave to chance. And financial advisors can do so much. And without giving it away, can you just tell us why we need financial advisors?
Yeah, I would say you need financial advisors for accountability. To hold you accountable. That you said that you want to achieve a goal, and they're essentially going to help you to achieve that goal. When I'm speaking to clients and I'm kind of introducing financial advice to them, I'm always kind of giving them an idea of what it could look like in terms of how I could play a position in their situation. And the first one, I always try to describe it as almost be like a financial therapist.
Okay.
Having a financial problem and not knowing what kind of answers to solve that problem, and sitting down with your advisor and letting them know how you feel about this and what's going on, and them being in a position to provide you with some solutions, through their experience, through their knowledge, through their expertise. And then the other side of it may be from a perspective of having like a financial personal trainer.
Okay.
And now you're starting to go, okay, it's starting to make sense. Someone that you can go to them and tell them, look, I'm trying to look like this. I'm trying to have this 6-pack. I'm trying to run 100 miles. And they will create a plan for you, and they will help you work towards this goal.
Okay.
And whether in the rain, sleet, or snow, whether you're not in the mood or you're not feeling too great, they're going to motivate you, and they're going to keep you on track to work towards those goals. So, a financial advisor is someone that ultimately helps you reach your goals and your objectives. But they're usually doing it through your finances.
Okay. What are some tax efficient ways of just general stuff? I know, everybody's situation is different, but what are some tax efficient ways of structuring a person's finances, just generally?
Generally, I think an individual needs to be utilizing the allowances that they have access to in the UK. Okay. A lot of what we do is around identifying where they should be putting their money, and why they should be putting it there, and more importantly, what impact it has on the individual. And like you said, everyone's individual circumstances are different, but a lot of these products are the same. A lot of these products are accessible to everyone in the UK, especially if you're a tax-paying individual or a UK resident. So, the first one would be like a pension. A pension is effectively a savings account that has a tax wrapper around it. So it allows you to put money in there, and that money will grow tax-free. free of income tax, free of capital gains tax. But the other benefit is you're in a position to also receive some tax relief from that as well. And a lot of people are not actively using this as much as they should.
Okay.
And why that's important is because it's not just about kind of maximizing for now, but it's about, you know, your future and starting to think a little bit ahead. Like I said, that I try to think 1 to 2 steps ahead, but this is where you're thinking like, you know, 20, 30 years ahead.
Yeah.
And why that's important is because, you know, obviously we don't know what's going to happen, but we want to be in a position where we have some control over what we want our future to look like. And, you know, I'm still in that process of kind of building for myself and my family as well. But the one thing that I've experienced is speaking to clients and speaking to older individuals that are now in those kind of positions or get into those positions, and they don't know what their future is going to look like. They don't know what their retirement's going to look like. And a large part of that is because they haven't put a plan in place and consider to maximize some of these tax efficient vehicles like you mentioned. So a pension is definitely a vehicle that can help you along the way of kind of building your retirement plan. Outside of that, we have ISAs, individual savings accounts. They have an allowance of £20,000 that you can use every year. That gets
Tax-free.
Tax-free.
Okay.
It gets replenished every year. And you're in a position to also have money in that tax wrapper free of income or capital gains tax as well. And you're also in a position to potentially invest that money also. So you have cash ISAs, which are usually held in a bank, and you would generate interest from those accounts similar to just a normal bank account.
But you can't dip into it.
Well, you can, but if you take money out, in
It's
most
taxable.
cases, you can't put the money back in.
Okay. So if somebody has an ISA
Yeah.
and saves up to 20 grand a year?
20,000 a year.
A year.
Yeah, and it replenishes every year.
So in the first year you save 20,000, and the next year you start afresh, save another 20,000, and then so on and so. Is there a limit?
No. In terms of the yearly limit, it's
No.
only 20,000. But in terms of ongoing, there isn't a limit.
So you can build up 60,000.
Yeah, you could be doing it for the next 20 years as long as the government keeps the allowance alive. You know, it's been 20,000 for the last couple of years, so we haven't seen it move in line with inflation for the last couple of years. But it's at a good level.
Yeah.
We've recently seen the British ISA now that's been announced, which means that there's an additional 5,000 that they're going to allow individuals to invest in UK companies.
Okay.
So you could be in a position now to potentially have 25,000 tax free, and you could do that again next year. So there's no limit in terms of how long you do this, unless they change the rules, which you know we're seeing them change the rules constantly. So who knows what it's going to be in the next couple of years.
Okay. Michael, tell our viewers a bit about, because when it comes to investments, it all boils down to starting early, right? It's the coffee, it's the little things, right?
Yeah.
It's the latte, the daily latte. You know, it's the having lunch in the work canteen.
Yeah.
You know, it's the buying of stuff from the corner shop. You know, it's the little things.
Yes.
That over a period of time, sort of accumulate. And I've read books and all that, and I mean, I started really early. You know, I started investing early in various things, and I think it's easier if you start early, because you have the effect of compounding and all that.
Yeah.
So can you tell our viewers a bit about why they need to start early and not wait till they're in their 50s to get their things in order?
It's, you know, compound interest first is the ninth wonder of the world, they say. You know, with compound interest, what is essentially happening is, as your money is growing, that growth is being added to your original amount, and now that new number is being invested again, and that is happening multiple times over this period, whatever the time frame is. So it adds an exponential effect to your growth. It allows the money to grow much quicker than if you were to just have an investment, have some returns on it, and take the returns out and allow the original investment to keep growing or to grow them separately. Okay, so that's quite important in terms of investing in general. Now, why is it important to invest earlier? Well, I'll give you an example. I was doing an event. I was speaking at an event recently called Wealth Unfiltered, which is an event to talk about the raw and uncut version of finance. So a bit of a financial kind of educational piece. And the one thing that I highlighted, I remember speaking to a client that was in their 50s, and they wanted to retire in 10 years' time. Which is always the conversation. It's always nice, you know. You get to your 50s, you've worked for a period of time, you're slowing down. Now you're kind of in the headspace of, you know, this needs to stop at some point.
Yeah.
You know, I need to, you know, cruise into the sunset, go to the Caribbean, you know, get some sun. You know, all the usual stuff, which is fine. And now looking at that scenario and having that conversation with them and identifying that they wanted to live a certain lifestyle when they got to 60. What was quite interesting was when I was looking at the numbers for them, and they wanted to live on the average retirement income, which, you know, the UK is about 31,000 to kind of 37,000, ranges around that.
Okay.
So if we was just looking at like 30,000 a year, something like that, from kind of 60 onwards, they would need to have put in from 50 to 60 to reach that goal. They would need to put in about 3,400 a month from an investment perspective.
3,400 as in £3,400.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is assuming that they had like a compounded growth of like 6%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would it have been if they had started in their 20s?
Yeah, so if they started in their 20s, and assuming the same compounding effect of say 6%, which is very conservative, you know, because, you know, people will talk about, you know, the performance of the stock market in the UK and the US, you know, can see anywhere between 7 to 8, even up to 10% a year. You know, that monthly contribution would have been about £600.
Wow. Okay.
Because we're now talking about a 30-year time frame as opposed to a 10-year time frame. And I think that's the one thing that people tend to forget, is the fact that one of the key benefits of investing isn't just what you put in, it's how long you put the money in.
Okay.
The time of the investment as well. So when we see a lot of people talking about, you know, the S&P 500 is performing very well, you know, the FTSE 100 has this track record, the MSCI has this track record. A lot of these returns, these annualized returns, is based off the time frame. Had you been in that investment for that period of time, which usually, you know, kind of tends to be, you know, 20 to 30 years, if not longer, when you're kind of looking at these kind of time frames.
So, just in addition to that, pension schemes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so let's talk pension schemes. So in the UK, most companies are required by law. I don't know if it's every company. Yeah, every company.
It's every company, once the individual is earning a certain amount of money. So it's usually above like £10,000 or so that they're earning, and then if they're at a certain age, so it's usually above age 22, and they'll be in a position to receive what they call auto enrollment. Okay. So auto enrollment would be that the company would be paying a percentage of your salary into your pension. It's usually up to 3%. Yeah. And then as an individual, you'd be paying 4 to 5%, 4%, and you get some tax relief. So we're talking about potentially 8% that could be paid into your pension through auto enrollment. And once you're a qualifying employee, they would automatically opt you in to the pension scheme, which is, you know, very different from back in the day where you had to opt into the scheme and then decide whether you're going to go in or not. Now you have to decide to leave the scheme, which is kind of crazy because you have all this opportunity to generate a little bit of money.
Okay. And would you advise that people sort of use their company schemes to sort of top up? Because it's like, okay, my employer's putting in 3%, I'll put in the bare minimum. You know, but then they're kind of losing sight of the fact that that bare minimum might not enable them to reach their financial objectives. But the point I'm trying to make is, with financial planning, it's all about working backwards. It's about seeing what kind of future you want to have, working backwards, and then making a plan to make it happen. You know, like you said, the sooner you start doing that, the more realistic it is. Because there's people, I think it's a time bomb out there. There's people out there living their lives in their 50s who are soon going to come to retirement age and find that they are nowhere near prepared for the reality. I mean, they can't afford to pay their rent, or there's so many things. You know, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's very crazy to hear that, and very sad, because, you know, we're talking about individuals that have, you know, regardless of what they look like, they've been working for the last, 30, 40 years. They've been doing what they've been told to do a lot of the time. To go work for this firm, to go work at this factory, to go work at this office, and, you know, you'll receive your rewards at the end. You know, you get the golden ticket at the end, and it's like, well done, and now you can go and, you know, sail into the sunset. But the reality is, a lot of these people haven't put anything in place. And they've been kind of coasting through life, you know, maintaining a certain lifestyle, spending their money in various ways, but not ultimately, like you said, planning, working backwards and putting a plan in place so that when they get to that retirement age, they have enough money. Now, if they've done the bare minimum, they may have some money in their pension, and they may have their state pension. And with the state pension, you need to have qualifying years of about 35 years.
Of working
and receiving and making national insurance contributions for the last 35 years to get your full state pension.
What is the state pension at the moment?
So the state pension at the moment is around, I think it's about £220 a week. So we're because we just recently seen an increase with inflation. So we're looking at about 10,600 a year. 10,600 a year.
Wow.
State pension.
And that's not taxed.
The state pension would be paid out to you, and everyone has a personal tax allowance of 12,570. So, you know, if that is the first amount that's coming out, then you could say it's not taxable. If you have any pensions on top of that, that could be liable for tax.
So what about if a person has, say, rental income, and the person's approaching the pension age or whatever it is? They've got rental income, they've got their pension, and everything takes them above the 12,000 threshold. Would they have to pay tax?
Yeah, they could be liable for tax for that money, because when we're talking about tax, we're talking about the qualified income, the income that's coming in, that would break the bands, the thresholds. So anything above that 12,570 could be liable for tax, whether it's rental income, whether it's investment income. So if you're receiving kind of dividends from your investments, that could be liable for tax as well. So I think sometimes there's, and even pension income, you know, drawing money from your pension. Once you have a pension amount, after the tax-free amount of 25%, anything taken outside of the pension after that could be liable for tax, depending on how much you're earning for that tax year.
And with pensions, let's just unpack pensions a little bit. With pensions, can you draw down on your pension like when you reach a certain age, or do you have to wait till you've gone past a certain threshold? And then do you get like a lump sum with regular monthly payments, or is it just monthly payments, and what's the implication of both?
Yeah, so with the pension, you know, we have kind of different layers. So we have the state pension, we have our work workplace schemes, usually you might have your personal pensions.
Okay.
And with your state pension, you can take your state pension around, 66, 67.
Okay.
With your workplace schemes and your personal pensions,
Yeah.
you usually have to wait. You can usually draw your money 10 years prior to that.
Okay.
So, most people are at the kind of pensionable age currently around like 55, 56. And then in a position to start considering if they want to draw on their pension.
Okay.
So they don't have to, but it's now open for them to do that.
Okay.
The question is, what kind of pension are they in? Because there may be an old pension scheme that they have access to from an old employer. It may be a local government scheme or NHS pension. And with some of these pensions, they may be limited in terms of how they take the money out. So some of them may require that you can only access the pension through an annuity, which is basically like the pension would turn into a fixed income for a yearly basis. And once that happens, that's what you're getting every year. Or you may be in some of these more flexible schemes where you might have what they call flexi access drawdown. So you're able to access the money and draw as much as you want from the pension at any given time.
So are pensions inflation proof? So if your pension gives you an annuity, well, you have an annuity and it pays you X amount on a regular basis. X amount on a regular basis 10 years ago would take you as far.
It depends on the annuity that you get access to. Most of them will allow that opportunity to be inflation proof, but you need to make sure that it's set up with the right scheme. Some of these pensions are very old fashioned, so some of them might just have the option to have a fixed annuity and then you draw down on that, and in those cases it probably isn't inflation proofed. So this is where the advice comes in, because having an advisor to kind of look into your pension and identify what your options are is where their skill set is at, and be in a position to hopefully give you the right advice to tell you this is maybe a better option with what you should be doing with your pension based on what you want your lifestyle to look like.
Okay. Before I let you go, I want to talk about my pet hate, which is life insurance. Okay, because it's often misunderstood.
Yeah.
People say it's money down the drain, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that anything can happen at any time.
Yep. And, we're seeing it in real life.
Yep.
We're seeing it in real life. Culturally, you probably experience it. Your parents going to a funeral every weekend, culturally, and we're having to deal with these things, and it was always what I always saw was if someone passed away, the family would get together,
and people have to contribute.
People have to contribute.
Yeah.
And now the new contribution is the GoFundMe page.
Yeah. Okay.
People are passing away, and what's happening is people are now not just relying on family members to contribute; they're relying on individuals in the general public to contribute for these circumstances.
With a sad story.
Yeah, it is, because it's nice to see that people are in a position to help, but it is hard to see that it has to come to that also when a scenario happens like that. And unfortunately, we're all having to kind of realize that at some point it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a certainty.
Yeah.
Right? There's only two things
Death
that are
and
certain.
taxes.
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes.
Definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and the funny thing is that if a person has life insurance, and even if they pass and they have liabilities, all of those liabilities just suddenly get paid off. So suddenly the liabilities suddenly become assets.
Yes, and I think this is where the education piece doesn't come in, or should come in, because the whole point of a life insurance is usually to kind of fill some gap or provide some provision for something that might happen.
Yeah.
And with life insurance or whole of life insurance, it is usually almost like a guarantee that it's going to provide this money. But when it does come to the individual, or to depending on what they want the money to be specifically set for, it will fall into their estate.
Okay.
In terms of all their other assets.
Okay.
Now, if they are in a position to set up a discretionary trust, which most providers will offer you the option to do, or should offer you the option to do, then what that would mean is when that money does get paid out, it will fall into this discretionary trust, which at that point would be outside of your estate.
Okay.
And why that's
it's ring fenced.
Yeah, it's ring fenced. And why that's important is because again, death and taxes, you know, the inheritance tax man's going to come for your assets as well.
Yeah.
So you need to be mindful of what that essentially looks like, and your insurance policy being paid out can fall into that bracket as well.
Okay. And I think some providers actually provide an immediate lump sum on death, which can be used to cover certain costs and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're talking about from your workplace. Are you talking about your workplace?
Or just individual policies? I thought there was a provision whereby if somebody were to die suddenly, you know, again, coming back to this thing of people having to contribute and GoFundMe and all that, I was under the impression that some policies would pay up a certain amount to cover funeral costs.
No, it depends on the policy that you have.
Okay.
And because all of this is based on the features of the policy that you're taking out. Because you could have whole of life insurance, which is a guaranteed payout regardless of when that situation happens, or you can have some kind of term assurance policy which
reduces over time,
which would be a decrease in term assurance, which is usually tied to mortgages, which means that by the time you get to the end of that period, there may be no money left.
Gap.
There's no gap. There's no money left. Or you could have a level term policy, which would mean that for that period of time, it will pay out that amount regardless of when it's done within that period of time. So if it's a 20-year term, something has to happen within those 20 years. After those 20 years, that term expires. Or you can have an increase in one, which would increase in line with inflation. So it's inflation proof, and that will grow within that time frame as well. If we're talking about anything to pay for any kind of funeral costs, it's usually like some kind of funeral care policy itself. Unless some of these policies may offer some options to pay out for children in the event of death of children, unfortunately, in a short period of time. So they may offer some added maybe £25,000 or so, some kind of policy, and that's usually tied to critical illness cover policies, which would pay out on the diagnosis of a serious illness.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you need a financial planner. I'm going to come for a health check, a financial health check.
Hey, come for a financial health check.
Just listening to you, I can see that it's not something that we need to take for granted, you know, and it's well worth, you know, having a financial health check. How can people contact you?
So, you know, people can contact me through LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Michael G. Donkor.
We'll put it in the section.
So you can contact me through LinkedIn. You can contact me through Belvedere Wealth Management. So Belvedere Wealth Management is the practice that I work for as a financial advisor. So belvederewm.com, and you can reach me through my website as well. So michaelgdonkor.com. It's my own personal website, but it's there for people to know that I exist, you know, and they can reach out to me, and if they have any questions, we can go through those together and see how best I can help you as well.
Okay. As we bring this conversation to a close, what do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do?
I love it. I love the environment. You know, I love you know, the communication, the conversations that you're bringing to the table. And I think it's important that, you know, for me, you know, seeing someone like you in this position, someone that I can kind of learn from and kind of look up to in terms of where you are in your journey is inspiring for me, because when I started in this space, I didn't have that. I didn't really see that a lot. So a lot of what I've done has been through trial and error. Okay. That's been my journey. A lot of my mistakes have been ones that I've had to make myself and learn from them, and that's how I've kind of ended up here. So it's been an interesting journey, but it's good to see that there's some people here that I can lean on as well.
Yeah. Michael's been a fantastic conversation. We have a tradition of this podcast where we give our guest the opportunity to dedicate an episode of the feature on.
Yeah.
To anyone of your choice. Who would you like to dedicate this episode to?
To anyone. Oof.
Yeah, or anyone or any group of people.
Anyone.
And you can look at the camera for that.
Yeah, I guess for me, we've touched a lot about family. So I think for me, family is what I'd like to dedicate this to. My wife, my kids, my siblings, my brother, my sister, my parents, and my relatives. I got various cousins that I grew up with, and even to this day, to this age, that I'm still very close with, and we kind of interact with on a regular basis. And for me, family is very important, and I think especially through lockdown and all the last couple of years, when you have had these kind of changes in your life and these circumstances happen, the one thing that is usually a constant is your family coming back to you, and they're starting to show themselves again. So I think that's important. Family is important.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this episode and you've watched to this point, I'd like you to like, share, comment, and subscribe, because the bigger we get, the easier it will be to bring guests like Michael. Michael, thank you very much for making this happen, and I've thoroughly enjoyed sitting with you.
No, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, see you guys next week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Thank you.